here we are ready to start with our seminar of today about cloud scaling cost on optimizations. This is part of a webinar series from the Argentina-Texas Chamber of Commerce. And we have today Juan Manuel Alvarez Jimenez from Invite, which is a global backend chapter head. And he has been participating in countless projects in the last 20 years with this role. Also, we have Rogelio Di Pasquale, who is Senior DevOps Engineer since 2017. And he combines the knowledge of cloud architecture and the enthusiasm for teaching. So probably we're going to have very expressive and nice explanations on how we do and how we obtain better cost and optimization around cloud scaling. So let's start. Who's going to be first, Juan Manuel or Rogelio?
Hi everyone, I'm going to start sharing the presentation, and mainly Roger is going to lead the talk. Okay. So
welcome everybody.
Okay, so this is us again. So we can jump here anytime later. So let's start today with the agenda. Roger, all yours.
Yes, so welcome everybody. The idea of what we are going to talk today is about not only what is cloud scaling, of course, but trying to think on the roadmap to be able to scale in the cloud. So that's the idea, starting from where we are based in, meaning how we are adapting the cloud services and thinking on many aspects of what this process or this migration to the cloud is if we are not in the cloud yet. So the idea is to revise and have some talking about the benefits of the cloud and scaling. Of course, we are going to talk about a couple cases we've been working on recently that involve optimizing costs and also optimizing the way the whole team of software development in our company works. And of course, we're going to think on optimizing some costs.
Okay, here we have a few comments regarding the cloud, like organization waste on average 30% of the money they are spending on cloud computing services. Another one is worldwide end user spending on public cloud services is forecast to grow 23.1% in 2021 to a total of 332 billion. And the last and most important is almost 100 billion will be wasted this year due to inefficient cloud management, which is quite a number.
So what we were talking before, and now knowing what are the numbers and what's the impact of talking about the cloud. So our idea is to think on how our services are running today. How are we hosting each of our services? We can think if we were just a cloud vendor, we would think on saying, okay, you can migrate to the cloud seamlessly and you are going to be successful on your business and you will pay only for what you use. That might be right, but in the most cases, if we have a company that started before and used to have physical appliances or has a slow adoption of the cloud, you're going to find some or a lot of not issues, but a lot of things that you must solve before moving to the cloud. So that's where sometimes we need some expertise on working and developing for the cloud. So this is the main ideas. In here, we divided the adoption to the cloud in 3 steps or 3 states that you can identify easily. That is, you can be on premise when you are on your data center. You can be based on VMs or EC2 instances if we are talking of a specific AWS cloud, but in any place, it would be just having a virtual machine, a host somewhere, and you can be using managed services from the cloud. So for each one of those states, it's not only applicable to all your infrastructure, but you can think on services or on verticals of your business that are being held or being running on each of these states. So for example, you can have a couple of services working in VMs that's a VM with an operating system and with all that things that you need to do when you have a host operating system that's updating the operating system so it doesn't have any vulnerabilities or any security issues. Then you will have to manage networking. Then you will have to check if you have enough space in the disks or in the drives you are using. So that will involve some costs, some maintenance needs they will have. And then you may have some services that are using actually the cloud managed services. For example, you may be using a managed database. So you don't host an operating system and then install, I don't know, SQL Server or Oracle or MySQL or whatever RDS you are using, DVMS you are using, but you will have the cloud giving you that service. So your only concern is using that data. So that's a managed service, but you have thousands, hundreds of types of services that you can have. And in all those cases, you will be using some infrastructure that you will pay on demand on what you use mostly, and you will not be responsible for maintaining it, for updating the version of the latest security update of something. So that's the idea of having a managed service. So of course, if you start on-premise, then you will have to run a whole migration in order to go to cloud. And if you are working already in the cloud, but you have migrated in what is called a shift and lift migration, that's just moving your infrastructure as it was on the data center to the cloud. So in that case, you will have lots of VMs in the cloud, and you will be responsible for example, patching the OS and checking the security. And of course, you may have some issues with what is maintaining or just having big instances or instances with a lot of memory, with a lot of CPU volumes, right? And you're not using them, for example, all the day. You are just using it to process some data at night, for example. So in that case, keeping that instance all the day on so you can process something at night is just making you spend money on something that you don't need actually. Why? Because you need that instance running just at the night. So maybe that's a point to think, okay, how can I run those processes with a managed services? Then you can go to, okay, I can move it to, for example, some containers like Docker and using, for example, Kubernetes to run those Docker instances. or images, let's say. So you have to think on how to go optimizing each one of your services. But this is not just about costs, because for example, if you say I have that process that runs once at night, every night, and it takes, I don't know, 2 hours to run because it's a lot of data we are processing, and we're giving some updates on a database and indexer platforms, etc. But you can think that maybe that can be run on, as we said, Kubernetes. Okay, then I have one thing to work on. That's, can my workload run on Kubernetes as it is, or should I migrate it to that? So here is where the core of the migration is, when you are outside of the ideal product. Because if you have something that needs some developers to run or to modify the code so it can be run on a Docker image, and then you can use it on Kubernetes, then you have to think on the process to get that. Then you have to think that you will have some projects, some of them will be small, some of them will be bigger, in order to migrate your code. So that is a play that can be think of a trade-off. You have a trade-off. I want to save money on the platform, but I need to spend some money on development to reach that state. So those are two things we have to think of in this situation. But we can add also a third one, and now Juan is going to help me. But the third one would be is with managed service, I can easily scale. That's
exactly.
And that's one big difference. And when we scale, we have more benefits. Juan, tell us.
Okay, so remember that in this table, when you are more into the on-premise, you have a lot of maintenance costs. And of course, you are also exposed to the risk of the hardware failing. And the more you are into the right, the more like you are leveraging on the cloud provider. Here, the thing is that not everything is scaling down. You can scale up and down and be more effective on what, or to have running only what I need. But the thing is, you should not only think on how to reduce costs, but also what does my business need? Because the thing is that when we are more into the right, I mean, in the center and the right, which is VM-centric or managed services, you are able to, the cloud is an enabler to move faster and rolling and deploying your application faster. So if your business is moving into a speed that needs you to be able to easily scale up and down as the business needs, or delivering new features all the time, believe me, it's way more doable in the managed services, or even when you're in the cloud, it doesn't matter if you're in the VM or in the managed services. And it doesn't have to be like your whole system is in there. I mean, you need to decide, because sometimes certain rules apply. Like, for instance, maybe if you have a really sensitive data, you maybe want it in your data center because there are rules or security policies or stuff like that. But maybe you can have satellite system that can move. So you need to decide what are your business needs on that. Remember that here the technology is an enabler for your business. I mean, I need to not stay behind the competence and be able to deliver faster. Do I need to be able to? I mean, remember that we have a high season everywhere in most of the business. So I need to be able to effectively scale up or down on those scenarios. And I want my people to stay focused on the business, and if possible, I mean, my core business is what I do for the company to be profitable, and not maintaining data centers or paying extra bill for anything which is not related to what we do here. So that balance that you need to find, that Roger was mentioning, is what are the key areas that that you maybe need to move. Like, for instance, if migrating a solution which is before the cloud era is going to cost me this month, say a number, and I can, and because of moving to the cloud, what I'm winning is not relevant. Stay where you are. But if it's not just the money of the migration that we're taking into account, but being in the cloud is an enabler for faster delivery, for more robustness, for a lot of other benefits, then it's something to take into account, because it's not only about scaling up and down. Remember that when you are already in the VM-centric or managed services, your infrastructure becomes software. If it's software, you can make backups and restore and experiment and do A/B testing and canary and a lot of experiments that before was not possible. So the possibilities are endless, and we see in a daily basis with our customers there. So, Roger?
Yes. Maybe we can move to the next slide, and in here we'll see some data, some snapshots from media, and basically this is about big issues that some companies failures that some companies had in certain time. So what's the idea? Well, when you have a peak of demand and you cannot follow it, so that's the worst scenario. Why? Because it can just be anecdotic, or you can become that company that goes down whenever everybody wants to log in there. So if really it can have really a negative impact on the business if you cannot cope with traffic. So the idea is that scaling will give you also, not only you will scale down to save money, but you will also be able to scale up to continue with business, continue with your service whenever you need to. And yes.
Yeah, and remember that you don't have to be such a big company to have your high season. The high season is relative to your business. I mean, it is measured in terms of how much more load you're having comparing to your normal requirements. So being prepared for that will help you basically not to fail when your customer needs the most.
That's right. You might have not millions of users, but just 100. And if you fail constantly, or you have issues when there is a peak on traffic, on business, on when they want to get some data from your application, then they might start looking at your competence. So that's what we have to look seriously. And there is another effect on scaling, because you know you have to be prepared for scaling. And I said that before. Maybe you have to switch some components on your development process so that you can help the cloud help you. Let's say you have to enable your systems so the cloud can auto scale and work by itself with only configuration. But the thing in there is that when you have a service that is so mature that it can be auto scaled, you have also a service that is mature to be, for example, deployed. So whenever your team needs to deploy a new version of that service, it will be easier. And of course, you will be having the same practice in all your environments. So you will enable your developers, or if it's a third party, your third party developers, you will enable them to work in environments that are really compatible with the ones you have in production. So you will save a lot of time that is sometimes spent in correcting misconfigurations or whatever a switch or a promotion between environment takes. So in that place, you will also be saving a lot of effort and spend less money, because it finally is, at the end, it's money. You will save also on your whole process. And by saving that, of course, you will have a team that is able to act or react quicker to changes in the business. So it seems to be like a win-win, right, Juan?
Exactly. I mean, most of the cloud providers really promote you to develop applications using the 12-factor apps, which basically a lot of aspects that if you do compliance to them, your application will be much more reliable, easy to deploy, observable, and many other things that I would, because I would basically for maintaining and monitoring. Remember when just deploying into the cloud is not enough. I mean, being mature and having your, I mean, we're not saying cloud native, but all the features that it already provides, if you need to handle or to manage them by yourself, is a lot of effort, which is basically putting your effort where it's not where it should really be. So just having the cloud as your faro, that helps you to say these are the guidelines that we need to use while building our system, because it's really seamless to go through the different environments, from development to testing to pre-production to production, and if possible with no human interaction in the middle, because you know that we do commit errors all the time. So it also helps a lot on becoming like better, more mature as a process. That's another side effect of being in the cloud. Basically because most of the procedures became code also. Okay, so and of course, then there are a few that are like the no billing surprises comes with a big star on it, which is your DevOps, the one that handles the infrastructure, need to know how to properly set up the cloud provider to not have such surprises, like proper alarms, basically alarms. There are alarms of consumption of the different services, because you could really have a big surprises if you don't do that correctly. Cool.
Yes, and we can add that as usually it's a good practice to have try to identify the assets you have for different business purposes, so you can just know how much you spend on each of those services, and of course trying to know how much those services how much value those services give to your company. So you get to know, okay, I'm spending this money on providing the perfect service for, I don't know, this part of my business. But if you have only 2 users, they do not imply that earnings or that value, maybe you have to try to redistribute the ways you are going to work on that. So
yeah, basically you can measure because you know exactly services, how much you spend for them, and you can know how much usage of that service is, if it works or not maintaining that, or maybe like giving much less resources or much more. when you have that on an on-premise basis, it's harder to say because to turn that off. Mostly because I'm sure that it's in a shared server, so you cannot just turn that off.
That's right. So let's go to a case study first, and then we can work on some questions that we are starting to have. So the idea of this case study is actually a real case, and it's about a development that need to have some updates, right, in order to be moving from one state to other of the ones we have analyzed. So the idea here is that we have some the concept of the web APIs, right, on some instances that were completely VM centric, and we could not get out of the VMs because that software was not supported on any container applications. So we need to try to scale that. So what's the idea? We didn't have the possibility to migrate a VM-centric service to something like containers as we proposed at the beginning of this webinar. So what's the idea? Maybe it cannot be migrated, or maybe we cannot afford migrating this on the short term. There is a project to do so, but it would take months to get to a mature state. So what can we do in the meantime? Well, in the meantime, we can start trying to see if we can scale those instances, those VMs that are working with our services. So in this case, what we started doing was taking the instances and actually creating some templates for images of those VMs and started to have them ready to be auto-scaled. So what were the benefits of having them auto-scaled? The idea was that before we were scheduling those instances to turn down in a 60% of them at night, and then we turn them up at morning. Of course, that was an automatic process and worked perfectly. But there was a minor difference that we used to have, that was that maybe if we had somehow a release of a new version of the web APIs, the instances that were turned down, they were not updated. So we need to be very careful of that. So what was the idea then? We have created something like the empty VMs, or VMs with just everything that was needed for this business, for these web APIs, and then we created an automated way to deploy our software. So the idea is that the same instance, the same virtual machine, knew how to auto-deploy everything on itself. Everything was saved on managed services that you have to store parameters in which we store the versions of the software we are going to deploy and the ports that we have to expose and everything like that. And then what we are doing currently is that we are having instances that are auto-scale. You know, we have 1 at night, 3 at the day, and even more if we have a peak of traffic. And then we can just reduce costs because we are removing instances that we don't need at night when the business or the traffic for business is really lowered. And then we have the option to scale up to the size we need when we have a peak. So that in the daily basis, in the day-to-day operations, it had to reduce our cost of those services that are in there in a 39%. So that was a lot thinking on just one service. If we replicate this to each of the services we have, we are reducing a lot of expenditures we have with infrastructure. Of course, this didn't take a higher impact on development because we kept the systems working on these same VMs. We didn't migrate this to containers or some other technology.
So you still have one more step to go.
We have
I mean, you are 39% better than before, and you can still have one more step.
We can get better. That's right. And we also with this approach, we enhance the way we were developing or let's say deploying and promoting software and maintaining that instances. So we have less costs of operations in these same DevOps teams. We have less time to spend by fixing or deploying or whatever, because it's done automatically. It's just switching a parameter somewhere, and when you do that, the next time a new instance is going to be created, it will be developed with or auto-deployed with the newer versions. Of course, you can deploy on the ones that are running there. And by last, we have mitigation of all the errors we may have before. This configuration, this version, nothing goes manual now. It goes automatic. It's tested before, and then you can go automatic. Of course, as Juan said, next step is to go to a container, because if we go to containers, we don't have to held these VMs. We will have assurance that the cloud will give us the power needed at any moment, and we even do not need to configure this. So that's the next step we have. But in this case, we did a good save of money. We enhance our promotion process, our development process, and by last, we managed to have less errors whenever we need to deploy or maintain our services.
Nice. Without mentioning that you could experiment all you want, like because they are already in that stage, they can take benefit of some extra tool that any cloud provider does, like having a portion of their users using a different version of the API because they're trying rolling out new features and stuff like that. Just because remember that when he says that he's creating a new instance, they are actually killing and instantiating new machines all the time. They are just processes. It's not that you are turning off a computer and turning on again. It's a new thing. And that helps a lot on rotating the cloud provider actually uses different hardware all the time. So also the chances of having hardware errors is less. And it's like your system starts fresh all the time. I mean, remember that there are that cases that you have a memory leak and you have to reboot your system every now and then. Well, now you are killing the instance. I mean, it also helps working
That's
around
right.
problems without actually fixing them.
That's right. And also, when doing this, if you have you start to work on your maturity. In fact, now in these cases, you start working not only on the development side of the systems you have, but also you are working in the DevOps side of it. So if you start having a mature DevOps process, you will try to have this, for example, in this case of VMs, you will have these VMs configured by some sort of a scripting just to create the images. So when you have these, then you can say, okay, I will start each, I don't know, in some months, I will try to get the latest version of the operating system, and then I will install everything we need on a script. So the update of those services, or I mean, we are going to create new images, and then you will use it on those scaling groups, on those clusters. Then you will have not only the software updated and easy to deploy but also having an easy way to update the operating systems. Then you will have always new instances with the latest patches, and you don't have to patch all those instances. You will only have to keep running those processes that let you have newer images.
Yeah, nice. To put it in short, creating a new instance basically is to like start from a base image, running a lot of script that is still not your app, but like the hardening of the OS and adding your stuff, and then the actual deploy of your app. So it could happen that you could update any of them, like new version of my app stay the same, but it's like anecdotic because if my app stays the same, but we have a new version of the OS, it's not that you are applying a patch on a running instance. You are running a new instance that has the update on the OS, and then on top of that, you put again the version of your app. I mean, no more wasting of updating an OS on a living instance. That doesn't happen anymore. So it's ultra secure, no migrations. So that's the good of this. Okay.
That's right. Then regarding this, we have a question in the Q&A section. And I think it's related to what we talked before, because it says, let's read it. Can you share some key practices to consider when scaling for security? Right? So I'm being compliant. So the idea is, of course, when we are in the process on recreating those images, so we are using a latest operating system version to patch it, etc. We're going to mitigate a great part of what it means to have to not have, let's say, the vulnerabilities that are discovered every day, because every day we have a new vulnerabilities on all the operating system and something that is being exploited or something. So, well, the idea is that if you keep creating new instances, I say I'm not still using, I don't know, a Linux version or a Windows version from 5 years ago, but I'm using Windows version with the latest service packs and the latest patches, and that comes in a single image, and then I install everything as Juan said. Then I'm mitigating the problems of keeping my infrastructure in a secure manner. Just
yeah, I mean, say
free
like
of vulnerabilities.
suppose that one of your servers get compromised because someone managed to enter into that server. If it's because of the scaling, it gets destroyed and start an event. I mean, the new one is start fresh.
That's
I mean,
right.
It start fresh because the everything that you deploy gets discarded, and you start again fresh from something you have stored in your, what your source code lives or your artifact lives. So it will be very likely. I mean, that thing will not be able to propagate. It will very likely that on the next patch, that vulnerability will be, will be fixed.
That's right. You have to keep your infrastructure secure, of course, as always.
Yeah.
With
that's something we leverage on the cloud.
That's right, on the cloud with everything you need to do, but also you have to keep your instances secure. So by doing all this, well, you have less exposure to this kind of attacks, of intrusions. So we're going to this
yeah, let's quickly revisit these key areas where you can optimize your cloud cost. Like, for instance, pay for what is needed. It's pretty obvious, which is in the worst case scenario, you have a huge server or group of servers always on in your data center. Here, you only pay for what you need, literally. I mean, they are measured by the time or by the compute unit. So you pay only for what you need. Of course, here you need the exercise to proactively monitor that you have what you need. The first quick win when you move to the cloud is, hey, why do I have this machine, which is a big one, which is 99% of the time idle? Then on that, you decide if we move this to maybe a serverless call like a Lambda, or to a much smaller instance, or you start scheduling when it's gonna be up and down. I mean, that's the lowest hanging fruit when moving to the cloud. Then, like, knowing your tools is basically, it's not the cloud provides a lot of different tools for different tasks. So remember that when you stay VM centered, you are using like the most basic feature of the cloud. Then you can move to more advanced elements that will help you reduce costs or be more effective. Remember that it's not just about, it's being more effective. It's not only reducing costs. Because if you need to spend more money on scaling up, you are welcome. I mean, what we don't want is to lose business opportunities because we weren't ready on the infrastructure level.
That's right.
I mean, tune the data warehouse. This is basically because when you are in a data warehouse, how you access your data can be critical on the bill. So there are a lot of considerations to take, like distributing your data across the different nodes, because that make it way more cheaper. And basically check the strategy on how you insert your data, because it's not the same to do bulk insert that doing a one-by-one basis. And that this is flexible spot or slot. It has to do mostly with vendors that they have like this negative band that if you use the servers at night when nobody uses that, it's cheaper and things like that. So then you can optimize the cloud storage. Like you have like hot devices and cold devices. I want the more expensive are the faster and which are more reliable. That I'm sure you want them for the transactional. But later, when for more maybe older historical data, you can use like not that much fast storage that is like really a fraction of the price. That getting the data back can also take one day to the other, but it's so cheap, and you only need it once a year for this special report that is for the SEC or whatever. I mean, that's very clever. And of course, listen to the network, which is identifying the top token and manage your log. Is basically look for any. I mean, the networking is also charged when you use it in a not very clever way, and paying attention to that can help also reducing the bill. All those 5 key areas is basically what is part of the DevOps task, is to properly set up the alarms and the how you call it, yes, the dashboard with the different key. I mean, you need to measure. You need to know what is normal, what is above normal, and below normal.
Yes, you can explore the tools every cloud provider gives you in order to optimize billing, or surely optimize your resources. You have a lot of suggestions that the same cloud provider gives you to be cost effective.
Nice. Okay.
So the idea here is on what is next. The idea is if you need to, or you are going to face this kind of migrations towards better use cloud or using all the services you need in order to reduce costs and be scalable. Just as we said before, you can take a pilot service you have, and you have to analyze the impact that it will have, the impact that may have in terms of development efforts, on DevOps efforts, and of course in the what you will win on your business by doing that. If this is to not have interruptions on your business, then it is worth working on it, having some effort on leveraging the benefits of the cloud for that services, for that vertical on your business. So then you will have to use maybe some cloud solutions or try to run reports on your own just to see how your costs are affecting the way you are giving value to the business. But surely you have to find that way, and you may have to get some help on the decisions, so you take the better path towards going to a managed use of the cloud.
Okay. So I don't know if maybe Facundo or someone is going to lead the Q&A session.
Well, thank you. I have one question here, which is related to how to manage this complexity that is increasing when you start escalating in cloud, because we're talking about maybe multi-cloud or maybe a new set of professionals that will be needed to take account of those different sectors or activities in the whole ecosystem that should be taken into account. What can you tell us about that? If you can go back to that slide where you have the different areas, this one, I'm sorry, forward.
You mean the table one? Or
another one? This one. This one, we can see clearly that you have to listen to the network. So you have to have network capabilities to look at the network. You have to tune the data warehouse. You have to take account of what's going on in your application and development. So how you can advise the companies to look after this and look how to establish their teams and get ready if they are starting to scale in the cloud.
Nice. First, I will start quickly, and then Roger can support me. But this complexity exists from always. The cloud help made it visible because it provides many out-of-the-box monitoring tools. The thing is, before the cloud, you still have all these issues because if the system requires what it requires. And you are installing your database, you are installing your application service, and maybe you were able to scale in a cluster of your own. You still have to have security, you have to have your networking and everything. Now, most of this is managed by the cloud. Once you are in the cloud, even if you're in a VM-centric manner, which is the stage of the middle, the infrastructure is a managed service already. I mean, you are just, every security groups or auto-scaling group or everything is managed basically automatically. So here are some roles that the distribution get worked in it differently now, because DevOps is, like the name says, is a little developer, a little operation. And here what stayed more like outside is the IT infrastructure, which you still, you need less of them, but you still need the eye to pay attention on this. But basically here, you have I mean, you need to pay attention or ready to say this is what we need to focus, or how we're going to manage the complexity here is you need a DevOps, basically, and there are, it doesn't change the checklist of the things that you need to pay attention, stay the same. But most of those checkboxes are already provided by the cloud, by the cloud provider, and you can focus on the other one. But that stays the same. Basically, the people you need is a DevOps, and of course, depending on the size of the organization, maybe a security expert on the matter, and maybe if you have intense, like you have intense database requirements, a DBA, a database administrator is also required, because he will get into how you use your data, but he will not have to, all those people will not have to look into the internals if the OS is in the last version, if the database is in the last version, if we have storage on the disk of the database, if the routing is done properly, or why are we not reaching that server. That doesn't happen anymore. So they can really focus more on what is closer to the solution you are building, and not to the internals of the solution, what is providing that service. Before, I remember when you need to install an Oracle database server, just installing the instance was a pain in the neck. The same goes for a Solar or a Windows server, or a Linux itself, or deploying a VM, or having the right, the proper environmental. They start focusing mostly on, they can be much more effective on what is needed towards the solution you are building, and not internal. That's my vision in this.
Yes, like the more you move to the managed services, that was the right of the table of the previous slides, the more the cloud manages. So you have less responsibilities on that service, on the implementation of that service, then you use it. So that's the idea. We always have a shared schema on responsibilities. So the more you go to the managed services, the less you need to have skills to know the insights of those services. But of course, you will need, maybe that DevOps team may have some different roles, like something more related to operations, or knowing about balancers and stuff. And some may be working on the side of troubleshooting and being closer to developers. But you have a set of skills that you need, of course. But as we can tell, if you have some cloud-specific engineers or architects, they will try to drive you to go to the most managed services in order to have less resources involved in maintaining base systems. So that's the idea.
Right, please don't move that slide, because there is another question that is related exactly to this situation of the journey to the cloud. And there is this question that says, recently my app gone to VM-centric approach, which would be my next step?
Stay there. No. Okay. It is very likely that, your app has many components that compose it. Like it has the actual code, and maybe it has a database, maybe a cache, maybe it sends mails, maybe it uses a message queue. And the thing is that little by little, you can start moving those things that are not the code to manage the server. Like, say, instead of having my own database, which is crazy today to have your own database, someone has to set it. you migrate to managed database service. I mean, the only thing the provider will give you is the connection URL, and you change that, and you forget. Of course, you move your data first. There is a migration. So there you can rely that your database is safe. Then maybe you have a message system like a queue, like name it Rabbit or another one. Again, you can stop looking into if it's up or down, whatever. You get a managed service on that. And the last thing you move is the app by itself. I mean, once the app is hooked to all the component it used to work, like name it, like you have a cache like I don't know, Memcache or Redis. Again, you go and get one, and then your app will be already using that. And then the last thing you can do is, of course, you need to look into if your app is. Remember that we don't know if your app was built like a monolith, or if it was thought to be replicated or not, because there are apps that are designed to be the only one touching that database. That would be really a very old app, or maybe some are already more modern and they are ready to be like replicated, and you can run more instances of me, and we are connected to the same database, and we work what we call in a microlito, which is a distributed monolith.
Yeah, well, the thing is, when you reach the moment of starting migrating your applications, you will have to analyze what parts of it should be migrated first, and have this trade-off of the impact or of the development effort you need to switch that or to migrate that, and the benefit that you will have. Then you will start having a roadmap of what you need to start migrating, and how you need to start working in order to move into the most possible managed services you have. So in that way, you will move into scaling, you will move into trusting the cloud provider to manage your services and your infrastructure, and the less you will have to do to maintain it.
Yeah, I mean, so to round up, everything is like, again, your app, once it's free of all the other components because they're already managed and you already have your code that hits all those services, then maybe you can start thinking of having that piece of code like all the, I mean, the best scenario is that code is container compatible. Let's say it's not Windows, and it maybe can be easily on that. If it's on Windows, I mean, again, just making sure that this app, everything that it consumes is outside of the VM. Once it's outside, then you can start replicating the VM. So that will be the happy, really, really, really happy path for what comes next. And this is how you go into the cloud with your app that gone VM centric.
That's right.
Well, great. I don't have any more questions here. I don't know if someone else is trying to find or think about another question to do in the last moments. Otherwise, we are going to close this session. Seems like, wait a second, because there is another thing.
Or we can just tell jokes or something.
No more questions here. So, well, here are your contacts. That's good. If anyone wants to contact you, I imagine that can go directly. Thank you so much. And well, this webinar is going to be is recorded, so it's going to be available for the participants later. So thank you, everyone, in the name of the Chamber of Commerce, and see you next one.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for the invitation. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.